Hello, today we'll be using the UpScale hair. It's double drawn in the lengths 22, 24, and 26 in the color natural brown. So first we went ahead and did a simple braid down pattern. We have 2 braids here, which will basically close off the install. And then around the back is just simply braided down, and the braids are flipped up in the back for a flat install. So the hair is bone straight, and it's full from the top of the bundle all the way to the bottom of the bundle. Very nice, silky straight. This hair can be used for sew-ins as well as quick weaves, ponytails as well. So starting in the back with the longest length, again it is 26 inches long. I personally recommend doubling your tracks. So generally you will double the 2 bundles in the back, and then the 3rd bundle you want to just use only 1 track at a time. So I'll be doubling them in the back using the flip over method so we don't cut any tracks. And once you're sewing them in the back, you want to, well first you'll go around, and I do the perimeter, so I just sew the track around the entire perimeter of the client's hair. And then from there, you then sew your tracks from side to side. Once you get around the top, we'll then start to curve them, so I'll show you guys that as well. So when you're sewing the hair, you want to make sure you're going underneath the braid as well as underneath the track. So don't actually sew through the tracks. That can cause some hair loss on the track. So make sure you're sewing kind of underneath, as well as I use a loop method to really secure the track in place for a more secure foundation. You don't have to sew extremely tight, but you want to make sure you do have some tension so that way your clients don't end up with loose tracks. And because you're going underneath the track, you might have like some little flyaways that come as well, but you could just comb those out the way. It really won't be any big deal. Okay, so this is the only time I'm actually going to cut the track just to seal off that 1 perimeter braid. So this is the 1 track sewn in all the way around the perimeter of her hair. Good. Alright, so now I'll go ahead and continue to sew in the back from side to side with the track being doubled. At the base of the track, so before you start sewing, I generally go in at the very end and actually sew through the width, and that's the only time, just to secure the track in really well. Otherwise, like I said, you go through the track, kind of underneath I should say. Just to secure it, you literally go in at the very end. After that, you will go through the track and underneath the braid. I just split the track in half, and you just kind of go up just a little bit where you want your next row of tracks to start with 1 track, and then you go ahead and flip that one. So the one that you sewed up a little bit, you just go ahead and flip it back to meet that little to meet basically the first one, sorry. And then once you sew that together, you're then just going to go ahead and sew it like that. So it may be difficult to see, but that's what I'm doing. So I'll flip this one back, sew it. And during this process, you can use the net. I use the net for like these extra spaces as well. So that way you don't have to always sew through the client's hair, which will also kind of keep some tension off of their hair as well. All right, so now I have both of these practically met together. I'm just gonna go ahead and flip them both, and then I'll begin to sew this next row of tracks, so it'll be nice and flat. And generally what I'll do, once you like run out of thread, you just want to make sure you kind of knot the thread a bit so that way it doesn't come loose. So I already loop knotted it before I cut the needle off, but you just want to make sure you kind of loop it a few more times to ensure that it's in and secure. So just where I finished sewing, I'm going to just come behind. So go through the braid first and through the tracks. After you do that, you just simply go ahead and create the knot, going through the thread and pulling it through. And you just continue to sew as you were before. And you want to make sure you sew all the way to that perimeter braid that you created in the beginning before you flip it over. Because if you don't, then you're just going to have braids exposed once you do flip the hair over. So to ensure that you don't have any gaps, so all the way to that perimeter braid. So now at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and flip it back and go back the opposite direction. So as you can see, once I flip this back, all you see is the track. You don't actually see her braids. So you take the track on the inside is the one that the one on the outside, my apologies. Going on the outside, you're gonna sew this one up a little bit, and then you're gonna go ahead and flip it back. And you're just going up the amount of space that you want in between your tracks. So you're not going all the way up the braid, just enough to create enough spacing in between your rows of tracks. And as I said, some of the hairs will kind of be gathered as you're threading, but just comb through them so you don't end up with tangles at the end. Just brush through them as you go. So now I'm going back in the opposite direction with that same track to make it align with the track underneath. And once I align them, I'm then gonna just flip them both back. All right, so now we're just gonna go back in the opposite direction. And again, this method just stops you from cutting the individual's bundles, like cutting your client's bundles, because not everybody wants their bundles cut. And then it also just saves you time as a stylist from having to pick up your shears, cut the track, start it all over. And because your bundles, well, for most bundles, these are pretty thick. You want to make sure you don't have to put them super close together. You want to make sure you're giving some space in between your rows of tracks to ensure that they lay flat and not like bulky right on top of each other. Like you're already doubling the tracks in the back, so you don't have to put them extremely close together, the rows of tracks, extremely close. The only time you would put them really close if maybe like your client brought you about 4 bundles, but standard sew-ins, most individuals just use 3. And so we're nearing the end of this bundle. And we're towards, it's at the end, so I'm still going to do the same little flip over method. Sew up a little bit on that inside track, and then I'm just going to flip this back, and we'll start the second bundle of hair. And as you can see, I'm literally detangling through the hair just with my fingers, so it's very manageable. So next I'll go ahead and end with the 24-inch bundle. Like I said, I'm going to start here where I left off and just go all the way around and keep flipping the track back and forth. And the same goes for this bundle as well. It's thick from the top all the way through the bottom of the bundle. And it is straight. So the hair is cut straight as well. Alright, so again, we're going through the bundle, through the widths, Going through the widths. You're going to create a looped knot to secure it to the actual braid. Alright, so once you have the track secure, you're then going to go underneath this time. So you go through the width again at the beginning of your tracks and at the end just to secure them. And then you go underneath the tracks as well as the braid moving forward after that. Okay, and because I'm running out of thread again, I'm just going to go ahead and loop to create a knot to secure this portion where I left off at. So that's pretty secure, it's not gonna come out. You wanna cut the thread, leave just enough, or leave enough so that way you can knot it a few times as well for extra security. So just a regular little knot, nothing spectacular. Like I said, I like to go at least 2 to 3 times. Once I've done that, you'll then just go ahead and cut off the excess. And the track is secure. So once I start again, I'll come behind the braid and through the track to continue. But as a stylist, generally you want to make sure you kind of at least thread several needles when doing a sew-in. That'll definitely save you some time from continuing to go like back and forth, back and forth. You do want to be careful not to make it too long, because sometimes it will catch knots and you honestly won't even realize it. So almost like arm's length at least, so that way when you stretch your arms completely out, you'll be able to straighten the thread as well without tangles. All right, so I'm just continuing the same exact way as I left off. This track, as I mentioned, so you're gonna pull it, ensure that you're covering the one below it. So I'm gonna go up about this far this time before I flip it back. And when you're going underneath the tracks, just try to go straight, not necessarily on an angle, because you'll end up grabbing too much hair and it'll cause like giant like gaps in between the widths of hair. So just try to go straight underneath and not necessarily on a slant. So even if you don't have like a braid there, that's what the net is for. So try to use the net as much as possible if you need like something to actually sew to, use the net. So now I'm just separating the widths again from each other, and I'm gonna just sew up on that inside track just to meet the perimeter that I had originally put around the front in order to get ready to flip it over. Alright, so now I've met both tracks together and we're just gonna go ahead and flip them back. And as you're going up with your tracks, you just want to ensure that you're following the curvature of your client's head. So in the back, you go straight from left to right. As you begin to go up towards the front, you want to make sure that you're kind of going with the curvature of their head. So again, I'm just going to take the inside track, go up just a little bit more where I want to position it to get ready to flip the track over, or the tracks over. All right, and so on this time, since I am getting ready to run out of thread, I'm going to go ahead and secure this portion off before I go ahead and start sewing both of them back the other way. And as you all can see, I'm only on bundle 2 and I'm at the top of her head. So these bundles are really full, and you honestly could get away with just using 2 if you like, but for extra fullness, I would say 3 for sure. And remember, with that last bundle, we're just gonna sew those in, or sew that in single tracks. So single, one track at a time in a sense, versus me doubling the width. And so again, depending on your braid pattern, with the one that I did with our hair going straight back, there obviously will be some spaces in between the braids. So just be sure, like I said, to always utilize that net where you don't have a braid, but you still obviously need to have a stitch there. Utilize the net. Just ensure that you're not grabbing your client's hair and literally just the net. So like those little, the little flyaways that may be in between the braids, make sure you're not grabbing those, but just literally look and stitch onto the net until you have, until you're at the braid. Basically, until you're at the next braid where you can stitch onto the braid. Okay, and I am towards the end, so I'm going to go ahead, like I said, split the tracks in half, and you'll sew down the inside track first, as close as possible to that perimeter braid that you did in the beginning, and then from there continue to sew in the opposite direction. And because I'm at the end of this this bundle, I'm going to actually sew this one a little bit closer to my last row, so that way when I start the single tracks, it just overlaps and lays flat. Like, I don't want to create a full row with this little bit of hair. So what I would do is, like I was saying, sew it really closely to the one before it. And so when I start the next bundle, I'll start right at the front and just continue to go back and forth. And just make sure when you all are combing or anything with your extensions, start from the bottom and work your way up. That would allow you to reduce as much pulling of the hair from the actual width. And that's even with your natural hair. You always detangle from the bottom and then work your way up. So you never detangle here in the middle. Always start at the bottom and then just work your way up the hair. And it also makes, the detangling process much easier. You detangle from the bottom. Okay, so now what I'm just doing is going through and combing through some of those flyaways or some of that loose hair that I caught as I was sewing in the tracks. Okay, so just like the other bundles, it's still very full from the top of the width all the way through to the bottom. Nice and flowy as well. So again, with this one, I'm starting right at the perimeter braid, using it as an anchor. And also with this last bundle, you want to make sure you kind of sew those a little bit closer together than you did the ones in the back, simply because you're only using one track now. So to avoid it from looking so thin and skimpy, you want to ensure you kind of sew them a bit closer together. Not exactly on top of each other, but just a little less spacing than you did in the back. Now again, if your client wants 4 bundles, then by all means you want to sew them up really closely together. But to fit 3, they don't have to be extremely close. Okay, so this is the anchor braid at the top, and I'll leave this braid for last. So there will be a track that just kind of circles all the way around, and it'll lay on both sides. So for the top, we're just about done. I have to finish sewing around just on this side here. So really about 2 more tracks and then we'll be pretty much done. So just as a reminder, when you're going back in, just secure through the width. If ever you have to stop and start over, secure through the width first and then begin to go back underneath the track. And I am gonna cut the track on this side just to fill in 1 more track here in the front before I do that last braid. Just so all of the braids are completely covered, but I don't want the guide braid at the top to be super bulky. So try at all possible costs not to cut your clients' bundles, because a lot of people do reuse them, as these are reusable as well. You can wash them, condition, blow dry, let them sit. I always recommend allowing your bundles to air dry. No matter where you get them from, air dry is always better. As less heat as possible to any extensions is always good. All right, you guys, so we have officially finished the sew-in process. And now we're gonna go ahead and straighten the leave out, as well as straighten out the tracks a little bit. So as you can kind of see here, you do have just some little waving up of the track, and that's just from the track being bundled up. So you can do this step before or after. Today we're just doing it after, so I'm just gonna kind of go through a little bit and bump out the wave so that way it's completely flat, as well as straighten out her own leave out. But this is what we have, super full. There's very minimal shedding, which is always good. And it's actually really soft, and you all can obviously see the shine as well. And for this part, you can go in with the flat iron or the hot comb. I just prefer to use the small flat iron. I feel like you get a bit closer to the track than you would with the hot comb. you do want to section the leave out in like 1-inch sections when you're doing it as well. So basically most people, you just leave out enough for like two sections basically. So we're gonna split this in half twice and split this in half and then straighten. So with the wax stick, just kind of lightly dab it on the hair. You don't have to be heavy hand, and you want to go down the hair just a little bit, and you can go ahead and comb that through. Now some people use a hot comb. Whatever your preference is, that's what you do. I personally prefer just a small flat iron. I mean, if I need to use a hot comb, I will, but for me, I just feel like a flat iron gets the job done. You would make sure you press the person's root twice, and then you just do one pass through the hair. That's really all it takes, is one pass. Just go slow, take your time as you glide all the way down the hair. And then you just use your comb as like the chase method. That's kind of what it's called, just a chase behind the flat iron. So try to help keep the hair as straight as possible. And you should really only have to do one pass through your client's hair. It really doesn't take more than one. Sometimes you can go two, but anything past that on your natural hair, you really shouldn't do. That's how you kind of cause heat damage to your hair. So one pass is good. So after you've done the leave out, let's say you run into some areas that still seem a little bulky as far as the extensions go, you can go in with your hot comb. So this is when I personally will use the hot comb, just to kind of lay the tracks down a little bit more flatter. And you do use your wax stick as well, just a little bit. You don't have to be super heavy handed at all, because you don't want the hair to be greasy. And you use the back side of the hot comb. That's what holds the most heat. So make sure you comb through the hair, but then you use the back side to actually flatten it out. And this is a step that you can do before the service if you like, or after. I generally just wait until the end to kind of seal everything in. And so if you were going to wear your hair straight, this will be the completed look. Very nice and full. So let me get a full view. This is the back. And it's very light, flowy. Does have some natural shine to it. I didn't spray anything on the actual extensions themselves. All right, you guys, so we're back and we're gonna go ahead and just simply curl her hair, style it up really nice and pretty. So when you're doing curls, you can use like holding spray. You don't want to use too much, okay? But you do want to use enough so that the hair can hold the curl. So we're just gonna actually trim it a little bit just to kind of frame the face. And you don't have to get too crazy with your layers, just a little bit, so that way your hair is able to hold a curl. As the more hair, it'll weigh down the curls. And because we did use like different lengths as well, the hair will be layered, but adding a little bit more really help to set the look. Finished look on this hair. So again, it's upscale hair, double drawn, inches 22, 24, and 26. And and the hair is still soft even after curling it. So this was with Sam's Beauty, you guys. Upscale hair. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Bye.